Now I'd like to move to the fun part. I'm actually going to be going to combine because as a football sports nerd and I like things like this. So, but yeah, the NFL draft. So again, like I mentioned before, this draft is very good by all accounts. I think everybody's kind of said this in consensus that this draft doesn't necessarily have a top quarterback, doesn't necessarily have blowout uh, wideouts. Not to say that there's no good quarterbacks or wideouts, but compared to last year, this is very much kind of a down year with regards to drafts. There's even some questions on like is Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders, are they really worth the first overall pick? Yeah, and that's debatable. But compared to last year, where it's like it's got to be either Caleb or Jaden or whomever, right? So I say all that with the Bears and where they're at. They got the 10th pick, the 39th pick in the second round, 41st in the second round, 72nd third round. Don't have a fourth rounder, but they got 149 fifth round, 204, 235, and 242. So with the 10th overall pick. And, I would love for the Bears to trade back a little bit and maybe, swap first, get an additional second or third. Ideally, right? Because like I mentioned before, there's a lot of talent in the second and third rounds that I think the Bears can get on good value. Uh, but there's also a feeling that I don't know if there's going to be too many trades or trade ups. I don't know how exactly the draft's going to work, but with the lack of quarterbacks and crazy awesome wide receivers compared to previous years, I feel like there might not be as many drastic draft changes in this draft. So I'm a little pessimistic that the Bears will be able to trade back. So with that, I don't really have any trades going on, at least in this draft. But for kind of just seeing what we can do here, maybe I'll do some additional trade back scenarios and see what the Bears can get in the future ones. But for the sake of this whole thing, I'm just going to stick with the picks that the Bears got. So with the 10th overall pick, it's kind of it was a little bit all over the place. I think there's a number of different ways that the Bears can go. I know Ashton Ginty is kind of in the conversation, but like a lot of people have said before, this is a pretty deep running back draft. So that's definitely where, yeah, like is Ashton Ginty, 2 rounds better than the next running back? That's the whole question, right? And to me, he's not necessarily that. He's good. He's great. He's a speedster. He can do a lot of amazing things. But I feel like there's a lot of other areas that the Bears can use draft capital to get an excellent, roster and build off that roster. So I have the Bears taking Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. I think this is one of the most predicted from all the sports analysts who do the mock drafts, who they're taking for the Bears. I think there's a couple of reasons why. So, call it a little bit boring. But I think it's because Kelvin Banks Jr., there's some questions about his arm length and is he more of a tackle versus guard? And that's also one of the reasons why, at least for me, it's like, yeah, I don't feel so strong. I don't think there's like a Trent Williams or a Joe Alt in this draft. So I don't feel as strong about the Bears actually honestly taking offensive lineman in the first round. But I would say with Kelvin Banks Jr., I think he could be an excellent guard. I think he can start day one at left guard, right? So, I think that is a good option. He's 6'4", 320, super athletic. There's a lot of praise in his run blocking, which is like great. That's what Ben Johnson likes, right? So being able to run the ball and set up the play action, not put so much pressure on the quarterback. So he fits, I think, the scheme of an ideal fit of what Ben Johnson likes out of his offensive lineman. You look at Kevin Zietler, right? He's like 6'3", 340, like a really big guy, almost towards that mold. So, and he can move around. Needs to work on a little bit on his pass protection, from my understanding, although he's graded out really well on his pass protection. But again, we'll see about with regards to this whole arm thing. I think he's projected to be around that 33-inch benchmark. I think most people wanted to be 34. So we'll see on all that. But I think he starts day one on the left guard side. Now that we got Trey Smith, Drew Dahlman, and it also kind of opens things up a little bit for Braxton Jones if he takes a step back, if we're like, hey, we want to upgrade, maybe Kelvin Banks, maybe he is the answer at left tackle. And then we let Braxton Jones go in the offseason. I'll be one to be like, hey, look, Braxton Jones, he's been a decent left tackle, especially given his, I guess, pedigree from being a fifth rounder out of what South Utah was it. That being said, it's like, all right, if you want a Super Bowl kind of contending team, you can upgrade. I think he's definitely is one of those players, but solid left tackle. I think he's just not the best on the bull rush. So I think Kelvin Banks, back to that from Texas, can be left guard with the potential to be left tackle. In this coming off season for me, or maybe next year. There are some left tackles that are slated to be free agents next year, like Rashawn Slater and such. So maybe the Bears still under with Caleb Williams' rookie contract. They're able to pick out a left tackle that way, or maybe there's some better ones in next year's draft. But I think for what they're trying to do right now, Kelvin Banks I think makes a lot of sense. If Will Campbell is there, that's a maybe too. But I really like that the size and physicality that Kelvin Banks brings here. So moving on to number 39, running back. I'm looking at the Bears. There's I think in the mock drafts that I've been using, there's like some DTs there, and I don't know. I have mixed feelings about if those things are going to be accurate. Like, is Kenneth Grant? He was showing up there, and I would love to have a Kenneth Grant there, but I don't. Every single other actual like mock draft that I've seen out there, he's been taken in like the late first round. So would love to take him there, but I kind of ruled with like, okay, that's not as likely going to happen. I feel like, so I'm going to go a little bit different here. I'm going to take running back Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. So he comes out at 6 foot 220 pounds, but he's compared to Ramondre Stevenson. I love the scouting report that was written about him. It says he runs like a downhill truck whose brake lines have been cut. So I look at that and I'm like, that's hysterical. Past 2 seasons, he's gone in at least 1,500 yards. He's averaged 5.9 yards per carry for both years, both the previous 2 years, pretty consistent there, and scored 15 touchdowns. He grades out as a pretty solid catch or two out of the backfield. Some room to kind of grow there, and also pass blocking he can improve there. But I feel like that's for a lot of college running backs. He has a good frame, so I'm not too worried about him being a decent pass blocker at 6 foot 220. But yeah, I think he would complement DeAndre Swift really well. In a sense, again, we have Ben Johnson now. If we want to compare and contrast what the Bears have to what Ben Johnson was able to do with the Detroit Lions, is he had that thunder and lightning type of dynamic duo in Gibbs and Montgomery. So in this case, DeAndre Swift, I guess, is a poor man's Gibbs. No offense to DeAndre Swift, but just not there. And then David Montgomery, like that power back, that's definitely where I feel like the Bears could upgrade some. Rashawn Johnson, I was kind of excited about him, but I think with him, he's very much more like straight line, like very much straight line. Whereas I feel like with Omarion Hampton, he does have power going up and down and such, but I feel like he doesn't necessarily have the lateral quickness. I think that's where Omarion Hampton, really excels at, is he's got some lateral quickness, can juke, make defenders miss, but then also run you over like a freight train. So, yeah, I think having those three running backs, I think that really sets the Bears up for success, though. And I would love to see an Omarion Hampton be on the Chicago Bears. So, and then moving on to the 41st pick, and again, I was looking at fits the scheme, has good level of performance, and and yeah, is there any familiarity or anything like that? So I think my whole thinking is I was looking at Dennis Allen, kind of also, who does he like? What's the mold that he likes? And I'm looking at the edge rushers. There was Princely on there. There was Jack Sawyer on there. Lennon Jackson, he was like Plan B, honestly, because he's a really big guy, and he kind of fits almost like a little bit taller Cam Jordan. So I was considering him, but I'm gonna go with the 41st pick. I'm gonna go with JT, and I might screw this up, JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State, for the national champion Buckeyes there. 6'5", 270, fits the mold what Dennis Allen likes out of the edge. So, he's he can plays the run pretty well. Has some moves to get to the quarterback. I think, I was looking at, again, the edge rushers. Chase Young was, 6'5", 265. Trey Hendrickson, he listed at 6'4", 270. So yeah, it really kind of fits that mold there. He's gotten some sack production too. I think that's the one thing compared to, say, Landon Jackson, who I think he had like maybe 5 sacks the past couple of seasons, like for each season. But compare that to Tuimoloau, who's gotten like, I think, like 6 or 7, and then also 12 sacks this past season. Albeit, he played a little bit more games, but really showed up at the best times. Right during the playoffs, he was a havoc. He was getting around everybody and going through everybody to get to the quarterback. So I like him. I think he's a little bit more physical than, say, Jack Sawyer. So I want the JT to Maloa. I think he'll excel in the NFL level, and especially in a scheme with the defensive coordinator that Dennis Allen is. So, and then I doubled down on the defensive line for the 3rd round pick at number 72. I took defensive tackle Alfred Collins from Texas, who is 6'5", 320. This defensive tackle has all the measurables that you could possibly like. It'll be interesting with how he grades out in the pro day, combine, right, all that. But he 6'5", 320, but very physical, explosive nose tackle with the great frame and long arms. He needs to refine more of his pass rush technique. He's only had like one or 2 sacks basically every year. He's a little bit on the older side. He's played 5 full college seasons, so the whole COVID year thing. But the one thing is that he played behind Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, right? Both of which went first and second rounds perhaps past couple of years here now. And I think it really just goes to show this how Texas's depth, the Longhorns' depth there on the defensive tackle side. But then, this past year, he was one of the top rated tackles in all of college football. He had a 87 pro football rating, and I think he only had 1 sack and such, but he got to the quarterback a bunch. He graded out really well. He stopped the run. And I think for the Bears, I'm thinking about how the defensive line is going to look. Billings, who's been pretty decent here and there when he does play, only has 1 year left in his contract. He's going to be 30, 31, 32, somewhere around that range. I don't think the Bears are going to resign him. So I think that the Bears are going to think more in the future, get more of that nose tackle so that Jervon Dexter can focus more on, getting to the quarterback, be more of that 3 tech there. And like I mentioned before, we got Rankin. So I think that's where the Bears might be going here, is get more of that nose tackle that can clog the lanes more. And, that's where I like Alfred Collins with his size, his physicality. And it's not to say that Alfred Collins can't get to the quarterback. He just needs to refine some things here and there. And then maybe his sack total will go up. So, but yeah, I like Alfred Collins. I see him, as great value in the 3rd round here. I think there's been some projections, him maybe possibly going sooner, but, he came up here, and I've seen a lot of other mock drafts him going in the 3rd round. So I'm going to take Alfred Collins here. And then, again, like I mentioned before, we don't have a 4th round, but we do have a 5th rounder. So, and that's where I was talking about with getting some O-line depth. So we addressed kind of the left guard position, but then, with Kelvin Banks Jr. in the 1st round, this is where I'm like, okay, let's put some depth in the 5th round. Let's go after center, but maybe he can play guard too. That's where I like Jonah Monheim from USC, 6'5", 300 pounds. He's going to be 23 when the season starts. He's a really versatile offensive lineman. He's played 30 games at both tackle spots, so both left tackle experience and right tackle experience. He's played 12 games at center, and that's where a lot of people project him to stay at. But then he also has the flexibility to go out at guard. He started 4 games at guard too. He's lean but mobile, so he can go move around a little bit. Has limited arm length, and again, that's the reason why people are projecting him to be center or guard. I think he's a solid backup at center or guard. I think he can be like that Ryan Bates, just maybe cheaper, younger, and hopefully maybe a little bit better. Familiarity, like I talked about that before, he has played with Caleb Williams. He played with him for a couple of years there at USC. So, I think maybe there's some continuity. if something does happen to Drew Dalman, maybe doesn't pan out, then certainly is where Jonah Monheim can come in and has some familiarity with Caleb Williams. And, if there's injuries in the guard spot, maybe he can line up in there too. So again, getting some depth, some options there, improving the offensive line depth. So, and then moving on to the 204th pick at tight end, might be botching his name too, Luke Lachey from Iowa, tight end at 6'6", 250. He only had 4 receiving touchdowns in college, and part of that I think has to just do with the notoriously anemic Iowa offense there. Keldon Johnson is really the only highlight there, but at running back. But Luke Lachey, he has, it's Lachey, kind of like Nick Lachey. He has the prototypical size and decent athleticism at tight end. Good catching ability, good catch radius. Again, at 6'6". I think Ben Johnson, I think he likes the Iowa mentality, especially for tight ends. Drafted Sam Laporta with the Lions. I think he wants tight ends to be able to block, and it's a plus if they're able to run some routes, go downfield, go down the seam. If it's anything like a Sam Laporta or George Kittle, if Luke Lachey is anything like that, I'm really calling Lachey. Then hey, I think that could be very much a plus, especially in the later rounds here. So he is a son of the former All-Pro tackle Jim Lachey and Ohio State football radio broadcaster, so which I find pretty interesting there. But it's a football family. If his dad is a former All-Pro, won a Super Bowl there with the team in Washington. So, I think there's a lot of positives. Again, you can take these gambles on in the later rounds, especially at the tight end, and also can sit behind both Cole Kmet, and then also Ali Cox, who we picked up in free agency. And then at wideout at 235, we already got the burners, right? We already have Tower Scott, who I think he also ran a 4.39 in the combine, and then also we picked up Tutu Atwell. But I think we still need to add some depth there at wideout. Maybe something a little bit different. We don't necessarily need a burner. If we do want a burner, maybe what's his name, Arian Smith. But at the same time, I feel like there's still some talent. Maybe we can have on here in the wide receiver room something a little bit different. So I went with wide receiver Andrew Armstrong from Arkansas. He stands at 6'4", 200 pounds. So good size there. Very much a quintessential possession wideout in that he definitely doesn't have the over-the-top speed. He might run like a 6.5 to 6.4, or should I say 4.5 to 4.6 kind of 40 time. That's what I'm expecting. Maybe he runs a little bit slower, honestly. Wouldn't necessarily be surprised there. Doesn't get a whole lot of separation, but he's got a great catch radius. What I do like is that he was actually pretty productive. His first team All SEC this past season, got over 1,000 yards. Only had 1 touchdown though, which is a little bit surprising at 6'4", 200 pounds. But again, playing the SEC, maybe didn't have the best quarterback play too. So a couple of factors there, but I think he can fit in well with the wide receiver room that we have. I think we'd be nice to have a little bit more size there other than Roma Dunze. So I think just adding him in there just gets some more depth there. So, and then our final, excuse me, losing my voice a little bit. Final draft pick at 242. I'm looking at safety Glendon Miller from Maryland. 6'2", 195. Had 3 interceptions past year and then 4 interceptions the previous year. So, can get to the ball, a playmaker. Have seen him kind of be scouted as more of a slot kind of guy. But I've seen some dynamic plays, just went on YouTube and searched for him a little bit, I've seen some dynamic plays from him. There's like one awesome play where he just goes in like a missile and stops a running back. I think like either in the backfield or maybe a minimal game, just like lays him out. It's pretty incredible. So I think this late in the draft, if you can get a safety that for at least right now be kind of a good special teams contributor, I think that would be great. Keep in mind too that Biard he has 1 year left remaining on his contract, so he might not be here next year. He probably won't be next year. I think he's 32, going to be 33 next year. So and then we don't necessarily know what's happening with Brisker. So I think getting depth at the safety spot would be great for the Bears too in this year's draft. Um, so yeah, that covers basically everything. Again, like I mentioned before, I don't necessarily want to talk about, the fifth tight end or fifth left guard on this team. I think I left about $9 million in cap space, so I think the Bears can figure out what to do with the rest of that. But I think I covered some of the main uh, cuts, main signings, and main draft picks overall. Let me know what you think. Who did I maybe miss on? Who are the players that are like, what the hell are you talking about, Wayne? You have no idea what you're talking about. Or maybe talk about some different scenarios that maybe the Bears should be looking for. But hey, if you're gone this far, please like and subscribe. Give me more comments. Let me know what do you think about each of these picks that I got the Bears taking either in free agency or the draft. And thank you so much. There's definitely been a labor of love on all of this. And tune in to another episode. Maybe I'll cover in some other teams, or maybe I'll provide some insights to you on the Chicago Bears identifying at the combine. I'm going to be at the combine in Indianapolis in a couple weeks. So, if you're listening in and you want to say hi to me. Feel free to tweet at me at Wayne Pua. And yeah, bear down.